Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Badger Goes Berserk, a 4-issue limited series published by First Comics in 1989. The Badger is the brainchild of Mike Baron. Shortly after he created Nexus with Stephen Rude, he created the Badger. And I was a huge Badger fan when I was a kid. It came out from a very small independent called Capital Comics that only lasted like a year. They also published the first Nexus comics as well before they jumped ship to First Comics. Capital went out of business. First picked him up, and then later on, Dark Horse picked him up. But this is relatively early stuff in the career of the Badger. And let me show you some of those. So basically, today was supposed to be the second part of a 2-part video. I was going to review. I've saved the first 4 issues of the Badger here. I bought these off the stands. I loved them. At the time, they were very different, very interesting superhero comic. The Badger basically is this guy named Norbert Sykes, who's a multiple personality disorder sufferer. And he has many personalities, but his preeminent one is the Badger, who's basically dresses up like a superhero and goes around beating up people, not necessarily just criminals. Sometimes it's just people who bother him because he's crazy. He's nuts. So, but it was such a weird comic how it would combine, kick-ass superhero like fisticuffs. But then the Badger, his dialogue was almost as like Dada as Zippy the Pinhead. He would just say these non sequiturs out of the blue, and just obviously inside jokes for Mike Baron. And the first issue was drawn by this guy Jeff Butler, who created the costume. So I guess he's the co-creator of the Badger. Even though he quickly left, I had a feeling he couldn't make deadlines. It seems like he'd pop up, draw a few pages, and whatever. But I just want to show these off real quick, because I read these yesterday, and it's kind of sad to realize this. All these years I've kept them for nostalgia. I mean, I owned like 50 issues of the Badger. Years ago, I weeded out the rest. But I kept these first 4 issues because, I don't know, nostalgia. I wanted some Badger comics. And last night reading them, I was just like, no, these don't belong in my collection. Some really bad art. Even the writing's not nearly as good as I remember. The Badger isn't fully realized at this point. Some nice covers here, but yeah, I think I'm finally getting rid of these after 40 years. They're getting kicked out of the Academy, but I just wanted to show them to you real quick. Give you a little background on the Badger. So those came out in, I believe, 1983. So in 1989, this miniseries was made while the Badger was still continuing, and it's kind of interesting because it's a big jam comic. Mike Baron writes the whole thing, but all these various artists draw different parts, and basically a lot of the artists chosen kind of or at least the artists presented are basically connected to one of his personalities. So when this certain personality comes out, they get this artist to draw those panels and pages. We start off with a Dennis Cohen cover. So this is a relatively early Dennis Cohen. I guess not. He'd already been drawn for quite a while, but a few years. So this contents page is very useful here because they break down all the artists, what pages they're on. So the main artist of this comic, who basically does the bulk of the work, is this guy named Spider with a Y, just one name like Madonna. And he did a bunch of stuff for First Comics, and then I never saw him again. And he's such a weird style. If you can see this, it totally looks like Steve Rude, if Steve Rude suffered multiple head injuries, or if Steve Rude suffered a stroke and then had to teach himself how to draw again. There's some weird basic Steve Rudisms going on, but it's all a little just, well, first of all, it's not nearly as good, but it's also just a little, I don't know, wonky. So very strange, this guy. I don't know what his deal is. I mean, he did work with Mike Barron. Maybe he knew Steve Rude. Maybe he was Steve Rude's assistant. I don't know. These are inked by Jay Geldof, all the spider pages. So, guys, this starts off really weird. The badger lives in Madison, Wisconsin. That was another interesting thing about the badger. That's the state animal of Wisconsin, by the way. Is that it took place in Madison, which is, you know, almost all superheroes live in like New York City or Chicago. A few lives in Chicago and LA. But he just lived in Madison. And we start off this issue. The badger's in the park trying to read a book about Truman Capote. And this guy is listening to his boombox. And he's listening to a rap song. And I'm pretty sure Mike Barron wrote this rap because it's pretty bad. I don't think this is him trying to write rap. And I'm the baddest mother on the planet. This bitch'd be chillin' if only I ran it. Maybe that's not a bad rap line, maybe. I don't know. Some of these I can't even read because, you know, sensibilities were different then. But, so Badger asked this guy to turn it off. And this guy says, fuck off, basically. And so the Badger punches through his speakers with both of his fists, which, of course, kind of knocks the guy out. And he just wrecks the boombox. And then two of his friends come by, and they say, you messing with our friend, you're messing with us. And it's weird because Norbert Badger, he starts talking about all this stuff of like, about racial tensions are on the rise. We're all at fault, but I reject collective guilt. And then he starts rhyming, I guess trying to imitate rap. God, this is so bizarre. And so he offers them $5 for hair of the dog, I guess to buy a drink. And they're like, that's not going to cut it. And Badger keeps talking about how I wish we could have this fight without the weight of history, basically of race relations. And this is a very problematic scene. But this is why I almost like the Badger. Because, like, this is just crazy. Like, it's almost like a weird underground comic. Like, it's so bizarre. So he starts beating the shit out of these guys. Badger's amazing at martial arts. He knows like 18 different martial arts. And the whole time he's yelling, you know, saying non sequiturs. Just kind of weird shit. And when he's done, he bows and tells the crowd that this was just street theater that your tax dollars paid for. A limousine pulls up, and this old guy comes out with a dog that's really angry. And Badger asks, he says, why is that dog pissed off? And he says, it's a white dog. I don't know if you guys ever heard of white dogs. They're dogs, this is a real thing. They're dogs that are trained to hate black people. I guess they're popular among racist people. And who should come out of the car but Badger's abusive stepfather, who he hasn't seen in forever. His name's Larry. And it's kind of an interesting thing if you read The Badger. One of the Badger's ongoing catchphrases is he calls everyone Larry. Almost like saying, hey, dude. He just goes, any stranger, he's like, hey, Larry, what are you doing? So I guess that's why. The Badger faints dead away when he sees his dad. The dad actually is like proud of him because he saw him beating up black guys, and he's this total racist. And then Badger's adopted stepbrother comes out of the car. And I guess they knew each other as friends, and then later on in prison, they met each other. This guy, Jesse, and he met Badger's father, and he adopted Jesse. I mean, as an adult, it's kind of weird. So they Jesse lifts up Badger, throws him in the limo, and Badger has a dream, it looks like. And guys, look at this. This is the main reason why I kind of want to keep this miniseries. Of course, just like the first 4 issues, I was almost debating about like not keeping this around. But it's just weird and interesting enough that I think I have to keep it. But they get fellow Wisconsinite Dennis Kitchen, underground cartoonist and publisher extraordinaire. So weird. I remember when this came out, I thought it was weird. I was just like, because I knew who Dennis Kitchen was at that point. So it's Box Elder, Wisconsin, where Norbert / Badger grew up. He's hanging out with Jesse. Jesse's a sadistic little shit who's going to kill this cat. Norbert stops him. And then Norbert's stepdad calls for him. Where the hell are you, boy? And he comes and grabs Norbert. And he says basically like, oh, you're in big trouble now. I'm taking you out to the barn. And the whole time Jesse's all like laughing at him like, you're going to get it now. And just really fun Dennis Kitchen cartoony. I really like this here. I've never seen, it's rare to see stuff like this. Norbert doesn't want to go in the barn, so he's grabbing at the panel border here. That was kind of neat. And then a blackout panel. So now we're back in the present. We're back to the regular art team of Spider and Geldof. And so the Badger lives in this castle with Daisy, who's kind of like the secretary to this guy, Ham. Ham is a whole fucking story. He's a 5th century weather wizard from Wales who I guess is eternal. So he's still vital and young, even in our day and age. He met the Badger in a mental institution in the very first issue of the Badger. They were both in the same institution. They started communicating through some kind of mind meld that Ham instigated, and they both escaped together and became partners. I forgot about this, but I guess in these later issues, the Badger has gotten married to this woman named Mavis. So they all live together in this castle. Mavis is asking around, wondering what's happened to Norbert. She hasn't been able to find him. She's starting to get concerned. It's amazing just how inconsistent Spider's art is. Like, some pages actually look like, I don't know, second-rate Steve Rude. And then some pages just look like, God, really bad, like black and white comics from the 80s or something, you know, from the black and white explosion. Some really kind of primitive stuff. Daisy was a therapist at the mental institution where Ham and Badger were incarcerated. And when she quit to become Ham's personal secretary, she still kind of tries to give Badger therapy every now and then. Sneak it in, basically. To no avail, though. You know, multiple personality disorder is, you're kind of stuck with it forever. Every now and then the personalities can be reintegrated a little, but it's temporary usually. I'm no expert. This is from the Mike Barrett editorials. So now we're back to Larry's big spread here. He's got all these dog kennels, and him and Jesse wake up the Badger with a pail of water. And so basically, Larry has got this crazy plan where him and these other Nazis are gonna start a race war by like training as many of these white dogs as they can, unleashing them in all these U.S. cities, and supposedly that's gonna, I don't know, it'll start a race war. I think they're also like, they themselves are gonna start attacking black people, and to start this race war. But kind of an odd idea. Actually, it's a very odd idea. And I didn't mention this, guys. Sorry. One of Badger's only powers is he's like Dr. Dolittle. He can talk to animals, and all animals love him. So that's why Larry is entering into Norbert's life for the first time in decades. He wants his stepson to help them train more dogs. Because if he agrees, they'll be able to train like 100 dogs a day, because he can actually talk to animals. So of course, Norbert Badger's not into this shit at all. Contrary to what we saw in the first few pages when he's fighting those black guys in the park over a rap song, he's not a Nazi. So now I guess he sasses the father one too many times, and Jesse wigs out on him and puts him in a chokehold. Once again, Badger blacks out. We see a flashback to his high school years. He's hanging out with a girlfriend, and we see Jesse just getting out of reform school for the first time, and he beats the shit out of Norbert. So obviously Jesse was just always a fucking piece of shit. So here's an ad for the current Badger. If you're curious, this is like around the time of number 52 of the Badger. If you're a hardcore Badger fan, that's when this came out in the continuity. Once again, they wake up Norbert with a pail of water, and now he's reverted. Guys, I'm so sorry, I forgot to tell you that flashback sequence in high school is by Steve Epting. You could probably tell it was a different artist. Steve Epting actually got quite good about a decade after this. This is quite bad. It's not very good at all. But yeah, it's amazing, his growth as a cartoonist. Okay, back to the plot. So now when he wakes up, a young Jill Thompson draws this. This is what I thought was very odd. So this is 89, remember? Basically in the early 90s, she started drawing that's kind of when her name became known in drawing a bunch of Vertigo titles. She drew The Invisibles and some Sandman issues. And she wasn't very good when she started, at least in Vertigo. This is before that, and this is better. This looks better than her art a few years later after this. Maybe because she had to draw like a whole issue at once and she wasn't ready. But this isn't bad. Of course, Jill Thompson is way better now with her more cartoony style. Now she's a great artist, but yeah, I hated her early Vertigo stuff. Every time she did a fill-in for Sandman or something, I'd be like, this artist again. But this is surprisingly good considering it's before that. So now, this is the Badger's other personality, Emily, a little girl. And he's just huddled up in a fetal position, crying like a little girl. So they throw him in with the dogs. And even though it's Emily's personality, the dogs still like him and don't attack him. Emily mentions how soon they'll rescue me. A black knight will rescue me. And then we meet Norbert's friend and Riley. And this guy was introduced in the first or second issue. He's the Badger's buddy. He, I believe, is also knowledgeable of the martial arts, but he's basically a professor of economics. So he kind of consults Ham. Ham is basically, even though he's a weather wizard, in these later issues, all he cares about is making money. To him, it's like magic and sorcery, manipulating the stock market, all that stuff. That's basically all he cares about. So Mavis enlists his help to find the Badger, and he enlists some of his friends. And this taxi driver named Connie, we've seen before, and this Native American tracker named Meldrum Funmaker. On the news, they see incidences or reports of these dogs attacking people. It's already begun. Back at the Nazi compound, this guy shows up called the General. And I guess he's the bigwig of the Nazis. So he's here to check up on the progress of the White Dog Army. And he kind of fills them in on what's going on. And when they open the door to the kennels where they threw Norbert, Now we got a totally different artist, and now it's Dennis Cohen. And I believe Malcolm Jones. Let me double check that. Yep, the same art team from The Question. These guys had a long run together on The Question. And now Norbert is, I'll get his name in a second. He's his other personality. And he sicks the dogs on the general and Larry. The general shoots the dogs, but Norbert escapes. Even though he's not Norbert now. He's someone else. Okay, I'll get his name. Oh, his name's Gastineau. This is kind of interesting. Instead of a letter page or an editorial, Mike Barron writes a little anecdote about him getting to meet Jackie Chan when he was in Hong Kong and having dinner with him. It's kind of a nice little story. Okay, number 2. This is a cover by, I think it's Spider again. Let me see if it says on the inside. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Paul Chadwick of Concrete fame. Yeah, that's not that great. So we start off with chapter 2, Ain't I'm a Dog. And since he's still Gastineau, we still have Dennis Cohen as penciler, but for some reason now it's John K. Snyder as inker. And it looks so different. John K. Snyder's really putting his own stamp on Dennis Cohen's art. Look how like crisp the lines are. And so different than Malcolm Jones as an inker. You can kind of see his art popping through. But John K. Snyder did a lot of stuff for First Comics back then. Kind of a fan of John K. Snyder's art. Weird combination. So now he's just running through the woods trying to escape. He hitches a ride, and who should pick him up right off the bat is Meldrum Funmaker. He doesn't recognize Phil Meldrum because he's Gastineau in his Gastineau personality. But when Meldrum almost hits a deer, it makes the Badger come back, the personality. That's another thing in the Badger. It seems like anytime an animal was in harm's way, it would reawaken his Badger persona. Like if he was another character, if some animal's in danger. So they're reunited, him and his buddy, and now we're back to the castle. And all the Badger's friends, they've returned. I'm sorry, Meldrum has brought Badger back to the castle. He's resting. He's kind of mentally exhausted. And they're all talking about what to do. And I might have forgotten to say this, but whenever we go back to like the castle and we see all these characters, it's always going to be Spider and Geldof. But now we get another Jill Thompson, a few panels from her because the Badger has turned into Emily again. Daisy tries to give him some therapy, tries to figure out what's going on. And now we go to a flashback to Norbert's childhood. And this is drawn by Paul Chadwick. And it's pretty obvious Paul Chadwick. It's definitely his style. So this is just showing how horrible Larry was as a stepfather. His Norbert had a dog, and the father just shoots him dead right in front of him, and then takes him to the barn to give him another whooping. So it looks like it looks like here that he turns back into the Badger. Let me see real quick. I think this page 8 might be drawn by someone else. It looks slightly different. Oh no, it's Spider Geldof. Look how different this page looks than this one, though. Such a morphing style. So basically, Ham figures out what's going on, even though the Badger kind of already knew. but he's so confused with all his personality changes. Apparently, before this miniseries, the Badger was getting better. He was reintegrating a lot of his personalities, but seeing his father has really set him off. That's why he's fluctuating in between personalities really frequently. He usually didn't in the comics I used to read. It was pretty rare. So that guy Riley, his economics professor friend, he's at a bar and he gets a call, and I guess he's causing trouble. I mean, not really. These rednecks, including the sheriff, basically, said some racial slur to him, and now he's mouthing off to him. And they're like, we're going to kick your ass. So the Badger shows up with Meldrum. They're not going to have it. And of course, the dialogue's all zany. The way that Badger talks to them. And we get a pretty nice fight scene between Badger and his friends and these neo-Nazis. Badger gets in his car, and Riley and Meldrum get in their van, and they're going to rendezvous later. But then all of a sudden, Badger has another switch to his personality, Max Swell, who's almost like this, like James Bond, the Roger Moore James Bond without the action part. He's just kind of a dandy. He's an aristocratic dandy type, a fop. And look who they get to draw. They get Mitch O'Connell. And this makes sense because one of the first Mitch O'Connell comics jobs was he drew the world of Ginger Fox with a Mike Baron script for First Comics years and years before this. And obviously, Mitch O'Connell's gotten way better since then. I mean, this is pretty nice. I'm saying this is better than, that Ginger Fox stuff in the early to mid 80s. God, yeah, this is some nice stuff. Very just stylish. Very designy. So I guess in the midst of all this turmoil and shit, because it's Maxwell, Mavis just agrees to go on a date with him. It's just another weird thing where, okay, neo-Nazis are trying to start a race war, but Mavis is like, hey, you promised me a date. Or at least Norbert did. So now we're back to reality. So it's, well, not reality, but the normal story. So we're back to Spider Geldof, back at the Nazi compound. The general and Larry and a bunch of neo-Nazis are discussing what they're going to do. And so I guess they've been rounding up dogs, as many strays as they can find. And gets even weirder. One of the dogs they find is walking down the highway with a backpack, a little travel bag full of pills. And it's Spuds MacKenzie. You younger viewers might not know Spuds MacKenzie. He was a very popular commercial spokesman for, I believe, Budweiser. And he was just a dog with sunglasses, like a pit bull. And all these commercials where he'd be surrounded by bikini-clad hotties. He was like basically the epitome of cool, And so he's there. And they're like, okay, I guess we'll turn him into a white dog. So these guys are basically going to start their plan. Some dogs have already attacked black people. Now they're going to go into Madison and, attack black people themselves. And then the next night put on darkface, blackface, and attack white people to start this race war. So meanwhile, we see Connie, the taxi cab driving friend of the Badger. She's having a slow night, so she goes to her garage to smoke a bowl. That's another thing you didn't really see in comics back then. And two of those white dogs show up. I think you can see that she's black. I didn't mention it, but I don't know how closely you can watch these if you're watching it on a bigger screen. And they chase her. She kind of lures them through the trunk and locks them in the car. And then she just says, I guess I could just cruise around with these two dogs trapped in the trunk since the ASPCA doesn't open till 9. Now we're back to Maxwell and Mavis. They're having car trouble. And Connie happens to drive by. So we get more nice Mitchell Connell art. She picks him up to give him a ride. And then Jesse and this other Nazi show up in ski masks. And of course, they're going to cause trouble. I like this how Connie says, she totally pretends like she's scared. And she says, there's $1,000 in my trunk if you let us go. Here's the keys. And of course, when they open the trunk, these two dogs come out. Man, I love this, the look of this. I think there's another reason why I want to hold out of the series, just these nice Mitch O'Connell pages. He wasn't drawing many comics at this point. He was already doing like art, gallery art and stuff. So now, the Nazis take out Connie, knock her out, and Mavis is trying to get the Badger, to change. And he does, luckily. And, well, it's not so lucky. Because Maxwell can't really fight. He's just this dandy. But now he changes into his dog personality. One of the Badger's personalities is a dog. And these 3 panels of him as a dog are drawn by Mike Zeck and John Beatty, the very popular Marvel team, penciler inker team. Okay, to be continued. And now we have number 3. Pretty wicked cover by Flint Henry. That's some gnarly shit. And we start where we left off. So we have more Mike Zeck, John Beatty art. Yeah, that is so classic, Mike Zeck, John Beatty. Yep, here we go. So unfortunately, even though the Badger is his dog personality, he's not a very good fighter. The Badger is actually a master fighter in many different martial arts. They basically kidnap Mavis. Well, Jesse does. He actually leaves his Nazi friend behind. Oh, sorry about that. I didn't... Did I have that open properly? So this is all Zeck Beatty. And they pull away. And now we're back to the Spider Geldof. And once again, we're back at the castle. And we see the Badger's friends. Once again, they're nursing him back to health. He's collapsed once again. And once again, he wakes up as Emily. So we get more Jill Thompson, a few panels from Jill Thompson. Daisy, trying to do her therapy, she says, do you want to tell me about your childhood again? And guys, this is really nice. Eric Shanower. And he does the colors. You could probably tell how different the colors look here. I'm sure he asked. He said, if I'm going to draw these 2 pages for you, I want to color them. Man, this is just exquisite art here. Really nice. And this is just a memory of Norbert when he's a boy with his dog. And they find a raccoon trapped in a steel trap, half dying. So Norbert has to kill him with a rock because the poor raccoon is dying. He goes home to his mom, and he tells his mom that he threw all the traps in the lake. And the mother's like, oh, your father's going to be very angry with you. I wonder if they ever dealt with that in the comic, the whole issue of his mother just like putting up with this. Like, she married Larry. She knows that Larry is like totally abusing her son, but she doesn't seem to care. So now he goes up to his bedroom angry, and he's reading a Journey into Mystery comic, and he sees one of those ads. Count Coldcock, the deadliest man alive. Learn the secrets of Yubiwaza and never be bullied again. Those kind of ads. This is Eric Shanower here, but then this artist is Paul Frick, kind of a weird, strange angular style. Or not necessarily angular, just, I guess, just primitive. So he has a little fantasy about beating up Larry, his stepdad. And then we turn to Flint Henry. And this is kind of apropos, because Flint Henry's really good at just kind of drawing gnarly things. And this was just the most intense part of the comic. I remember reading this, I guess I was in my early 20s, and I was just like, holy shit. So one day, after the steel trap incident, Larry comes home. He's like, oh, you're really going to get it this time. And, Norbert's crying. He says, drop your pants. And he's like, go ahead and scream. You sound just like a little girl. Maybe I ought to treat you like one. And it's kind of, obviously implied that he rapes him. And, just gnarly stuff. And look at how Flint Henry draws his face like something from like Graham Ingalls or something, So now we're back to, Norbert wakes up, and I think he's the Badger now. So we're back to the Spider Geldof art. Back at the Nazi compound, we see all these dumbass Nazis talking about what they're going to do, about their plans. And they've got Mavis tied up. And it looks like they're going to torture her. And of course, what's his face? Jesse. He's just totally being all like, oh yeah, I'm going to have my fun with her. And the general slaps him. He says, an army must have discipline. I'm in charge here. Cut that shit out. And Jesse says he won't do it again. He says, sorry, sir. But then as soon as he turns his back, look at this. This is so violent. This is how he kills him. Holds his skull and then just punches his neck so hard. It almost takes his head off. So he kills the general. His dad is totally fine with it. His adopted dad, Larry, is just like, oh, I guess I'll be general now. Oh, I didn't mention, guys, sorry. This art is by Joe Staton and Bob Smith. And you can see that very distinctive Bob Smith inking. Lots of craft tint. So now Larry tries to have his way with a Mavis. And Mavis puts a whoop ass on him. I guess Norbert's been teaching her some martial arts. It looks like she's pretty good. And she stomps his ass and then escapes. She says the only reason she doesn't kill him is because she wants Norbert to have the opportunity. Because she knows that Norbert probably wants to kill him. So they have a piece of her dress. They give the dogs the scent. And they head out to the woods to catch her. It's funny, that weird Spuds MacKenzie dog is just kind of playing it cool. But he joins the other dogs to chase after her. Mavis gets treed by the dogs. She's stuck up in the tree. Jesse's menacing her. And then Spuds MacKenzie shows his true colors. And he starts coming after Jesse. And that's when Pierre shows up. So Pierre is another personality of Norbert's, and he's completely psychotic. I think he's almost like a serial killer. Like, I think there were issues where he almost killed his best friends. He's just a psychotic. And I guess this is his dog. And by the way, this last page is drawn by Jeff Butler, the very original first Badger artist who created his costume. Co-creator of Badger, I should say. Okay, now we got number 4 here. The last issue. This is actually a pretty nice cover by Spider. I like just the layout and composition. Kind of dynamic. And here we go. And so more Jeff Butler. It's really interesting in the 5 years in between Badger number 1 and this. Like, Jeff Butler was kind of good, like a great fanzine artist. But it looks like he really actually got pretty damn good. in those intervening years. I have a feeling he's one of those guys who just went into like graphic design or animation or illustration, because he barely did any comics. And obviously his chops have gotten way better. So now we see this great fight scene where it seems like the Spuds MacKenzie dog almost knows doggy kung fu, and he beats the shit out of these two dogs, rips the throat out of one of them. And well, then this is like what I'm talking about, how weird the Badger is. He starts going, Pitbull, Pitbull, Uber Alice, Pitbull, Pitbull, Uber Alice, Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil. It's just so weird. So now Mavis jumps out of the tree and starts attacking Jesse, and Pierre joins in. And also Spuds MacKenzie joins in, starts biting his leg. So now we get the Leroy personality, and this is Mike Zeck again. I assume John Beatty. Let me double check on that. No, now it's Jay Geldof, aka Mike Zeck. I guess John Beatty had some Marvel duties to take care of. Now we're back to the Spider Geldof team. We're back to the castle, and all the characters realize they really gotta get their shit together to help out Badger. Ham, being a wizard, he summons the Elder Gods. He says that they all have to wear these purple robes. And I guess they summon Spuds MacKenzie, who jumps through the skylight window. Is completely uninjured. And he basically says, almost like Lassie, he's like, woof, woof. And they're like, oh, you know where Badger is? We'll follow him. He'll lead us to Badger. So off they go on their merry way. And now we're back to the Mitch O'Connell art, because he turns into Maxwell for a second. Which isn't good news, because Maxwell can't fight. And now he turns back into Badger, I believe. And that's why it's back to Spider Geldof. So Larry and Jesse are basically threatening our young couple. And this page is kind of interesting. It's like all the artists, because the Badger's cycling through his personality. So Jill Thompson, Emily, Mitch O'Connell, Max. I'm not sure who all these are. I think that's Jeff Butler doing Pierre again. It says that one of these is Walt Simonson, and is that Walt Simonson? I'm not sure. This doesn't look like Walt. Well, I don't know. Maybe like Walt Simonson didn't really draw for First Comics. Maybe he just dashed something off for them. So maybe that's the Walt Simonson. I don't know. So it looks like Jesse's kicking the shit out of the Badger. Well, whatever personality is. And then Spuds MacKenzie joins the fray once again. Bites Jesse's arm. And when he attacks the dog, once again, the Badger personality reemerges as dominant. And now Jesse's in for a fight. But right then, the Badger's buddies show up in their purple robes. They keep talking about how they look like the KKK. There's so many weird things, too, in this that I forgot. Like, Mavis always, like, calls Badger, like, honorable husband. And I know it started as a joke, but she says it all the time. As if, like, she really calls him that. Like, like that. Like in an old 40s movie, the Asian wife would be like, honorable husband. I don't think people call their husbands that. They're just like, honey, hey. Once again, Mavis starts kicking some ass. She takes on this Nazi guy and beats the shit out of him. This guy was holding her, restraining her. She bites his arm and beats the crap out of him. And it looks like the Nazis are falling one by one. And now the Badger's back. Hey, excuse me. And so now Jesse's really got a fight in his hands. And we get a crazily choreographed fight scene. The Badger was known for always having like these the choreography. Obviously, someone knew martial arts. I think Mike Barron did. So he probably advised the artists. So just a lot of fighting. This is that Spider Geldof team once again. This is kind of an epic fight. So at least like 6-7 pages of just the Badger against Jesse. And then finally Badger gets to confront his shitty stepdad. And stepdad's trying to plead with him. He's actually scared. And the Badger's the better man. He doesn't kill his father. You kind of wish he did. And basically it's a happy ending. He says, okay, guys, let's go home. Let's take off these stupid robes and get out of here. I really like this coda here. So now we're in Milwaukee. And some of those Nazi white dogs are still roaming around. And we see this little black kid listening to his boombox. And one of the white dogs comes out. And the kid just talks to him. He's just like, hey, you just hungry? Are you just hungry? You got an attitude problem. Here, I got some food in my pocket. And he gives it to the dog. And the dog's totally like, yeah, you're my friend. And they run off happily together. And the kid says, we're going to get along famously. And of course, he's listening to a rap song that I'm pretty sure Mike Barron wrote. Got a message for you. Gotta send it airmail. Hate will end when we all caramel. So dumb. So bad. I'm very glad Mike Barron didn't have a rap group. This is kind of nice. They tell us all the artists over the 4 issues what they drew and what they did. So, very interesting, odd little comic. And not just because of all the crazy jam artists. I forgot how weird Mike Barron was. And that's why I liked the Badger when I was a kid. It was so different than any other. I mean, it's a superhero comic technically, right? But it's almost like he's like in that lineage of the Jam and Madman. It is a little more superheroic and fantasy based, but it does seem to just be, because he's kind of crazy and he's also kind of human. He's just a dude who puts on a uniform. And other than talking with the animals, he has no superpowers. He's just really good at martial arts. So, very interesting comic. And, I might regret getting rid of my last 4 regular Badger issues. But to be honest, I haven't regretted getting rid of all the other ones I got rid of years ago. I've never once missed them. But I do want some example of the Badger in my collection. And this is a pretty interesting one because all the crazy art switcheroos in here. But, yeah, I guess I'll never forget the Badger. It's like an old friend that's faded away, like sands through the hourglass. he's passed on. But I still love the shit out of this comic. And this is definitely an interesting comic. Definitely, I kind of think it's worth keeping. So I'm going to keep these other Badgers. I guess I'm not going to keep them. I guess I'll see if anyone wants them. Contact me. But I guess that's it. And thanks for watching. And I'll see you soon here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.